Through the Mud Yoga. Welcome. Been a few weeks, and we've decided to self-quarantine this YouTube channel. So sorry to my 3 subscribers out there. Devastating, I must say. We all must go without. Kind of just coming off the cuff with this one. Really just want to make a video, put it out there. Yeah, I think sometimes in times like this, right, we're on quarantine. Most of us aren't working, or if we are, we're working in some different capacity. A lot of us are struggling. We have anxiety. Our daily life has been disrupted, and a lot of what we depend on to really, to depend on our lives, right, for us, is gone or has changed. And that's a very difficult concept to deal with in yoga, to deal with in meditation, is change or impermanence. It's tough to face it too, right? And I think sometimes while so much is changing in our lives right now, if we really took a step back, what's most important to us, or what should be most important to us, is always there. It's always present, whether or not we choose to focus. So I think that's the big reminder to have in these times of change, that there is constant within that change, and it's up to us to identify and kind of bring out those constant aspects of who we are as human beings and the interconnected nature of our individual self to the whole, right? We really are a part of the whole, and that's difficult because I think in our modern society we definitely have toted the individual, right? We are the individual. Not, maybe we're a part of something, but the individual is kind of more powerful. And I think you can look out at humanity and see that really kind of selfishness or the ego. And that's, I think, what a lot of these yogic traditions, these meditative traditions, that's really at their core what they depend. It doesn't matter when they were taught, what types of societies they came out of. It's really about that. It's about dissolving that ego and really starting to understand who we are. And with that comes great peace. Now, I haven't made any videos because I've kind of, obviously this is just a pet project, but part of me was initially like, oh, am I just going to dive right in with this, make videos, kind of like this is what I've meant for in some ways, which is a weird thing to say, but I've lost multiple jobs in my life. I've going back like 10 years when the economic crisis, 2008, I think, lost a job, had to relocate, wasn't even aware of what was going on. But looking back, I was devastated. I showed so many signs of, instability and all that. I just didn't have the insight into myself to really build the positive habits, the positive routines to grow out of that. I kind of, I grew in some ways, but kind of just really basically stayed in that illusion, and it wasn't very healthy. I quit a job by choice a few years ago, and it wasn't necessarily by choice. I think the writing was on the wall, but I also went through a big transition when I started my awakening, coming into yoga, starting to meditate on a regular basis. These were all things that have been present in my life. Going back a few months ago, I broke up with, a partner, a girl I'd been with for just, almost getting close to a year. We moved in together, and it really all fell apart, and I found myself heartbroken. I found myself alone and without a place to stay. And that doesn't mean I didn't rely on other people, but I've been on many transitions, and then I was finally building some momentum. I was getting some stuff going, getting everything, moving in the right direction, financially doing well. Boom. This coronavirus, quarantine stuff goes on, and it's tough. And then here am I trying to figure out my own individual self, and then I'm also looking and studying and analyzing and just observing the collective, whether it be through the media, whether it be through just observing people in everyday life. And it's interesting, and I'm worried. I know my own mental health can flare up, my own tendencies to isolate and really separate myself from other people can flare up, and it definitely did. And I'm aware when I'm in those kind of funks, those, as I talk about those cognitive thought grooves, those habits of body that just make me feel, I don't even know if they make me feel anyway, they just get me in that rut or that routine. Different things like iced coffee, one of my, you know, pleasures. I love it. Things like, my marijuana. We got some lemon sour diesel, you know. These things are very tough because I can just lean into those things. I can have too many coffees. I can smoke too many joints, right? I can smoke one in the morning. I can smoke another in the morning. Well, fuck, I'll keep going, you know, and then we'll get to night later. You know what I mean? And it's just not connecting with people and realizing that part of me likes having some of that community around me, the sangha that I don't have right now, and I don't really connect well online. And I think really we'll get into it a bit, but those are the problems we kind of face. So we have to, again, use our practice to anchor ourselves. We're constantly, that's the constant goal in our lives, is that spiritual journey and realizing it's a journey. So I don't have necessarily all the answers. I'm going through this myself. And I look out and I see everyone's going through it. How can you not? And there are certain people and there are certain things I'm doing each day to make that routine come together. And then I get into some nice blissful states. I really think the first 2 weeks were difficult for me. I had enough in place. My burpees, my yin yoga practice I was doing on the computer once or twice a week. I wasn't really meditating that much. My mind was frazzled. I was existing in that cognitive thought groove. I felt safer there. That's the truth, right? I felt safer in that kind of chaotic world because that's something, you know, someone who has had to deal with trauma, someone who had to deal with stuff in the youth. That's the way I exist in the world sometimes. That chaos is good. It doesn't feel good. I know it's not who I am, but it's like you're that wounded being, that wounded piece of life, and you're just kind of like skittering around like with everyone else, you know. You have to stop. You have to slow down and constantly be reevaluating and accepting change, right? So I think I could have been really hard on myself. I could have just not made this video. I could have just said whatever. But I think the truth is that it's a journey. It's about being present with where you are, accepting where you are, and then continuing the practice and learning from that. I probably learned maybe more in these last, say, 2 weeks about my own meditation practice, my own yoga practice, my own spirituality than maybe I did in, say, a few months ago when it was blissful. It was easy. I was succeeding. Things were falling into place. I was sitting for long periods of time without difficulty. I learned stuff during those times, and yeah, it's a great place to be. But it's in these times where we tap into the struggle of ourselves, and then we tap into that collective struggle. We can't just ignore that. Then we find peace. We anchor and center ourselves with our practice, right? It's not like when we're struggling, we're not practicing. Our practice is a struggle. And then we come through blissful times where we're able to recognize what's going on, recognize impermanence, accept change, and then get present with what really matters. The things in our lives that will be present with us and will not fall victim to impermanence.